Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is City Council of Monday, July 10th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Mayor McGrath.
Here.
Tracy Snyder.
Here.
Jen Mazias.
Here.
Tom Nymus.
Here.
Dave Anderson. Dave Anderson.
He's going to be late.
John Hopkins.
Here.
Jared Trimbo.
Here.
Warren Smith.
All right, thank you. Our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next item is the approval of minutes from the City Council meeting on June 12th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second that.
Motion by Tom, second by Jared. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the monthly expenditures.
Second. Motion by Tom, second by Mary. Any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Jared Trimbo.
Yes.
John Hopkins.
Yes.
Tom Nymus.
Yes.
Jen Mazias.
Yes.
Tracy Snyder.
Yes.
Mayor McGrath.
Yes. Very good. Our next item is public comment. And before we start that, I just want to remind everyone to please pull your microphone forward closer to you so you can speak into it as you're speaking during the meeting. And then thank you for stepping forward there. And Tony, did you make sure the microphone was on up there? Okay, thank you. And then per our usual, if, thank you for coming tonight, and if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Jewel Pickard, 17 East 3rd Street, is that coming through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
At the last city council meeting on June 12th, the mayor had read a proclamation that was created, I guess, a year or so ago from that on inclusivity. And she stated it was a hot topic at school board meetings and that she had read it at a school board meeting as well. What kind of struck me is that 1, the mayor is not in charge of the school board. 2, the school board issues belong in a school board meeting, not a city council meeting. And 3, the mayor is not in charge of lecturing Washburn residents about how they should think or feel. I happen to think residents would typically exhibit their best behavior if best behavior was exhibited toward them. When reading the proclamation, the mayor singled out older people, although no age was given. I'm assuming she meant anyone older than she is. The mayor implied older people aren't tolerant enough. A bit ironic to single out older people when you're lecturing about inclusivity. The main point is the U.S. Constitution gives all U.S. citizens freedom of speech, not just special interest groups. I believe the U.S. Constitution supersedes any proclamation the mayor might create or selectively read.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here for public comment? Anyone online for public comment? No? Okay, seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. Tonight, I don't believe I have any of those. So we'll move on to the next item, which is discussion and action on authorization to bid Holman Lakeview Drive Stormwater Improvement Project, which is tab 1 in your packet. believe we've had at least a brief discussion on this item as it was an add-on. And this is a helpful memo, so thank you for the details on that. Does anyone have a motion they would like to make to get us started with discussion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, that we approve, the action, for authorization to bid the Holman Liquid Drive Stormwater Improvement Project.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Jen, second by Tom.
I think everyone knows my opinion on stormwater. I'm always the one to bring it up, right? So I was happy to see that we're, being proactive, because obviously this is a pretty good pitch point where we need to make sure that we have lots of capacity. So not sure who figured it out and who saw that we needed to do it sooner than later, but I appreciate it. I suggest we move forward on it.
Anyone else have any comments, questions? All right, very good. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is discussion and review of social media policy. This is tab 2 of your packet. And this, I don't know if anyone cares to amend the agenda to wait for Counselor Anderson, since he was the one who wanted to have this discussion. That would be an option at this point. Otherwise, we can see if anyone has a motion to make or not, and if there's not anything, we can move on.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda and have the next, topics that were put on the agenda by Councilman Anderson to be at least postponed to our last. I don't think we should wait all night, but sure, we'll move them to the last two, topics. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Jen, second by Tom to amend the agenda as such. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then moving on to the next item after those two, we have discussion and action on resolution number 23-013 for the DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant Application for campground expansion. This is tab 4 of the packet. So my understanding is that this was submitted already. And so we are asking for just the resolution supporting the grant.
Correct, and that we would match the funds, the matching funds, if awarded.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. Questions, comments, or discussion?
I obviously have a few.
Okay, we'll let you go first. I have some too. We'll see if you cover mine.
Okay.
If you can try to lean in and talk into your microphone so that the people online can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, how's this? Is this
Better.
better? All right. So, looking at this, I am rather amazed at the $797,000 price tag. That is rather astounding. So, I definitely was in favor of all of the things relative to the overflow. We need that, and definitely the bathroom. That too is just a wonderful addition to what we have. And I imagine that that's probably most of the expense, if I'm correct in my thinking. But I'm kind of wondering, of course, you know where I'm going with this. You can see it, whether the yurts are really that much of a necessity at this point. And if this amount of money is there, I could go for the bathrooms, I could go for the overflow area, no problem. I would be a little, let us say, kind of wall-eyed with the yurts.
So I don't know that we've even actually seen the detailed cost estimates yet.
We have, this dollar dollar amount was based on the initial cost that Cooper paid to us, and then the cost that I came up with for building the yurts and the platforms and the infrastructure trails based on costs that I received from Jason Bodine at the time.
So at this point,
Part of the reason that the initial estimated cost was put in, because this had a deadline, and if we're looking for funding for next year, we needed to get it in by a certain date.
so is it accurate to say that the approval of this is somewhat theoretical at this point until we have the approvals for the specific amounts that would be spent on the different parts?
Well, this would be the dollar amount that DNR would be funding.
If we proceeded with the whole project?
Correct.
But we could always change and edit the project, is that correct? So that those amounts, like, if we decide when we see the numbers, like, oh, maybe we don't want to do the yurts right now, just theoretically, would we be able to amend our grant application and the amount?
With the DNR,
Yeah.
I'm sure that if it's less, we're spending less money.
Right.
We would just circumvent that dollar amount wrong.
Or,
But we would get, we would get same thing with the matching funds as well.
right, or we would spend, or you could spend it on, like, say, for example, something was more expensive or whatever, like, you could be like, oh, we're not doing the yurts, we're just gonna focus on overflow and the, because again, these are estimated, then, things have changed, maybe things will be cheaper. I really doubt it. We all know that things get more expensive, right? And so, although I used to be sticker shocked, I don't get sticker shocked anymore. There's nothing, we're paying $60,000 for a culvert, right? Sometimes. Where I work, sometimes we pay $60,000 for a culvert. It's just, things are super expensive, so. I think they might even come in more than what we have here, unfortunately.
And there's still time to do some cost benefit analysis and that sort of thing later, but this is just saying, yes, if we do proceed, we would match those funds. Does that sound accurate?
Sure. My question is on the funding.
Sure.
The park overlay funds, I'm concerned about how much we spend out of those. Simply because we've always been really cautious with those, right? We've never taken a big chunk and been like, oh, we're gonna take $200,000 out of this. We kind of keep that for, I don't know, emergencies or what have you, but it's nice to have that. And then also, and I know this benefits the community maybe in the long run, if that too, but I also like to make sure that we use that park overlay fund for things in our community. And, we have some playground equipment, we have a dock, and then we go for Tom, who's been bringing the dock up to the Parks Committee for quite some time. So I guess I'd like to hear from the administration a little bit on the borrowing aspect and kind of that distribution of what we might be thinking about. Sorry, stopped.
So for this project, if it goes forward when we receive the final plans, it's always been my assumption that a portion of it would have to be from borrowed proceeds as well. And that is a project that we will be delving into soon. We're just at the very beginning of the budget season and getting the budgets from the departments at this time. And part of the request this year is we need to look at a few potential larger borrowings that we do in this, and it's going to tie into what the city expenses are going to be related to the Bayfield Street project, how much we're going to be able to afford for other items while still keeping a reserve for the second phase of the Bayfield Street project in 3 years after that. So, so I can't really give you some specifics right now, but that's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. So I'm assuming that if the campground expansion goes forward, that would be one of the significant other projects that we would be looking at, along with other wants and desires of the city, be it bathrooms at other parks or other road projects that we may wish to undertake, or any other specific capital item that's going to last a long time in light of a significant dollar amount.
And that's exactly what I was looking for, because, you know, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, and where I get that we have this opportunity right now, I don't know if it's opportunity or conundrum, that we have to, like, if we're gonna do any kind of borrowing, we have to do it within the next year, because we won't be able to do it for so long. But I also want us to be realistic in terms of our capacity. And I talked about this when we were discussing our priorities as a city and as a council. I'm a little concerned of us overextending ourselves a little bit with too many things, too many irons in the fire. And when I talked about this last time, didn't go very far. We still approved all those many priorities. And I was trying to get us to narrow them down a little bit. So I'm just bringing that to the table again. You know, I feel like it's a good project. I feel like we put some work and energy into it. The timing, I think, is unfortunate or fortunate, depending on, I don't like being put in that hot seat where it's like, well, we gotta do it this year. We don't get to do it for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. And it goes like this. So it's kind of, I just think it's a little tough. I'm just slightly concerned about capacity, because I think about everybody at City Hall and Public Works. Jerry's out there, they got lots of work to do in the next couple of years, and we want to make sure we're really successful with the Bayfield Street project, right? Okay, that's all. I said my piece. That's my concern.
I have a question also for staff, and I think I've asked this before, Scott, and I just don't remember the answer. Do we have, or do we ever do a more long-term capital improvement plan? I know every year we talk about capital budget and general fund and all the different budgets, but I have found it to be very helpful to have a longer-term capital improvement budget, so that we can think ahead for some of the other things that everybody would like to see happen, and trying our best to project out, you know, when those things might be able to happen. Or even not, even just like putting it out there as this is what we would like, and decide what we would like, you know, for the next 5 years instead of just 1 year.
We have done capital improvement planning in the larger departments of Public Works and ambulance 4 or 5 years. And the utilities, of course, which are separate. But you know, the other departments don't have a lot of capital needs, at least not as often, so I haven't necessarily incorporated all of that and given the variables that we have. So, but there has been certainly some planning on that.
I do think it's a good item to think about for the Parks Committee in the future, to kind of work with Public Works to get those long-term kind of a little bit more 5 to 10 year planning out in our park systems of what's those big ticket items coming up. And I know Jerry, I'm sure Jerry's got a list on his desk. But I think sitting down and prioritizing that so that we do have some numbers and things to think about. Because when we take a big chunk out of our parks overlay, you know, it is, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm just saying it makes me a little nervous because we haven't done it before. And I know that we've been kind of holding on to that for, I don't know what, Christmas, but we've definitely been holding on to it. I mean, Mary, I don't know the last time we've spent any big chunks out of it. 10 year, 15 year, 20 year, but we've never did a big chunk.
Maybe we're hanging on to it for this campground plan that started development in 2012.
Maybe.
Was approved in 2015.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe this is the time. I just want to make sure that we're all have the background, we're all coming from the same place, right?
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Tracy?
I have a question for Tony. I'm just curious what the formula is for the DNR grant awards. you know, if they're looking, you know, because I know with the tennis pickleball grant, we didn't get it because we weren't big enough. And I'm
Yes.
wondering if, you know, they changed it so the little folks are a little, that award is more
So
equitable for
the DNR did
people.
change their structure for this specific fund. They have identified a certain dollar amount, I can't remember how much that is, for each region. So rather than competing with the entire state on projects, I think it's, I forget, 300,000 maybe, I can't remember. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but they're only looking at, so we would be competing within the Northwest region, so with Ashland, the Superior, with anybody else around here. But the other point of this is I resubmitted the tennis court grant as well, so we're also competing with ourselves for the tennis court funding as well.
So it comes out of the same pot, the
Yes.
same grant.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
so. But then again, competing locally, but then statewide, so we're, at some point, we would still be going statewide as well. But yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the item in front of us, supporting the grant application and commitment of funds? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I'm gonna proceed, I think we said we were gonna move this to the end, and when we said the end, we mean before closed session.
Yeah, so one more line.
Okay. Our next item is discussion and action on extensions of street closure and relaxation of open container for cruise-in at Patsy's Bar on July 11th, 2023. Tammy DeMar's petitioner, that's tab 5 of your packet. And that's kind of exciting that they already had such a great turnout for that first event. Anyone care to make a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, second by Tom to approve the street closure and relaxation extensions. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we'll go back up to item, well, I guess we don't have numbered items, but tab 2, the discussion and review of social media policy. And the one thing that I do want to just state before we talk about these next two items is that these are policy discussions that we should talk about in general and not refer to specific personnel as we're having those discussions. And so I think with that, unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I'm going to turn it over to Dave since these were your requested items. So the first one being social media policy.
Right, I just wanted us to review and make sure that we are in step with current policies. I don't know if you want to go through them one by one.
Are we referring for the most part to the, would be section 5.6B, the general guidelines for social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go through those items, whether unless anyone has any specific things they would like to.
Well, I'd be curious to know if other government agencies have adopted this, if there's any difference in any social media guidelines for other government agencies.
Oh, for that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott and potentially Max.
So this policy was provided by our labor attorney, and it was
So many of their clients used similar policies. So it's kind of a standard for many communities, but if you want specifics, we'd have to do more research.
Okay. Have any of the city employees been written up for any of these? Or not following the policy?
I would say that over the years, there have been instances where I have brought the policy up to employees.
Is it in their record or?
I can't recall the specifics offhand.
And just to make note that if you do have any specific questions, you're welcome to contact Scott and have those discussions at any time. So we'll proceed, I guess, just going through and reviewing the policy, if that's.
I mean, sure, I think it's probably, a lot has happened since 2017. The last time we looked at it. Because we all know, like, it's more and more popular, right, social media, and it's definitely, as I can tell you as a federal employee, I can't tell you what our policy is, but I can tell you I have to take a lot of training on this. But it's about kind of the same thing, like, you cannot represent the agency or wherever you work in your social media. You speak for yourself, you have to make it clear, like, you don't take pictures of you in your uniform and post them. Like, it's pretty specific stuff that it aligns, like, with this, in terms of, it's your personal account, it has to be clear, and you don't get to, like, and I don't know, I'm sure people get in trouble for it all the time, I don't know, I kind of stay clear of it, it's difficult, right, because a lot of times you're known in your community for,
The hat that you wear.
for the hat that you wear, so I.
Excuse me, I just want clarification here. Is this the most appropriate use of council time, or would this be more appropriate to be reviewed by administration, since this is a policy that was done in, what did you say? 2017. And if you take it back to administration and review the policy and compare it to the standards, current standards, and see if there's any updates, then you would bring it back to the council meeting and report to us. I think it seems very tedious that we would go line by line during a council meeting to review a policy.
Understood. So to answer part of your question, normally this would be something that would be brought to our administration to be reviewed and discussed ahead of time. But since the request came to put it on the agenda, our practice is to allow those things to come to the agenda. And so, and that's why I don't really have a plan for how to proceed. And so, Mr. Anderson has suggested that we review it line by line. If the consensus is that you do not want to do that, that's fine. We can not do that and only address potential issues that people have or questions. So how does everyone feel about this? Let's raise hands. Who wants to go through line by line and review the policy?
Well, I'll just say, we don't need to go through line by line. I guess I just want to bring this to our attention so that, as we all know, there was some issues, and I just want to make it clear maybe that we add in here that it's encouraged for, if there's some discrepancy in views from one to another, that maybe we encourage a line of communication with that person instead of using social media to. They can use social media to express their opinions. I'll be the first one, and I'm not going to try to step on anyone's First Amendment rights. But I think just to avoid further problems, encouraging a line of communication with that person prior to posting anything on social media might help things.
And I will say like our personnel committee, right, they often review some of these policies, so maybe my suggestion would be that I think it's probably worth the time, this is from 2017, to put this on a future personnel agenda, and just take a quick look and do a little comparison. I don't think that would hurt. We review policies all the time, so I think and then at that time, maybe, they can take a look at that, so.
So is that your motion?
Oh, sure, that's my motion. My motion is that we send this to the personnel committee, in the next, it doesn't have to be next month, if you're busy with the budget, where it can be, it's nothing immediate, it has to be done immediately, but, the next 6 months or so, and have them review this policy.
Okay. Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second
I'll
that.
second it. All right, I heard Tom first. Any other questions, comments? Mary?
Yeah, yes, personnel and finance. The other thing, though, it might help to quicken the pace is to see if the labor attorneys have anything, which you would do, but take the load off of you, get it from the labor attorneys, bring it forward at the meeting with us.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item then is discussion on establishment of policy / amendment of ordinances related to staff serving on committees, commissions, or council. That's tab 3 of your packet. Again, same thing here. We don't want to talk about specific people necessarily. We're just talking in general about the situation that does occur frequently in small communities. I just want to put that out there. Does anyone have a motion on this item to get us started with discussion?
I'll make a motion that,
Or I guess we can have discussion because it's on the
Yeah.
agenda
So-
or as discussion.
I guess my first question would be to Max, whether or not a municipality can, in fact, prohibit its paid staff to serve on committees.
I mean, the city can do anything that's not contrary to state statute. So Scott had asked me to give an opinion on this matter, and in doing so, I found this frequently asked question article here from the League of Municipalities that really highlights all the statutory restrictions on this. So anything that's not, and I did some other research outside of that, but really anything that's not in conflict with this FAQ, the city would be allowed to. So just for example there, we couldn't prohibit a volunteer firefighter from serving on a committee if they aren't paid more than $25,000. But because that's specifically in the statute, that is not an incompatible office. But anything that's not inconsistent with these provisions, you could do, yes.
Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss about this?
But the reason I brought this up is because I think there may be some conflict of interest when it comes to deciding policy. And I know this body decides policy, committee brings just policy to them. But having paid staff that, for lack of a better term, have skin in the game in some instances, may not bring a clear and neutral representation of what the actual community wants.
So I guess
Or what's, I'm not, I shouldn't say what the community wants, but what is best for the overall, long range, in the best interest of the city, not just the city government.
So to that, I would say everyone who serves on committees and commissions comes from a background that has a perspective, and that's what they draw from is their experience. And it would be very difficult to find people who are completely neutral on all issues. And I have not seen any conflicts of interest, and if there have been, people have been good about abstaining from voting on particular issues. So I have not seen any issues with this. If anyone else has any input on that, I would be open to hearing it.
Well,
Other than specific names of personnel,
for example, I mean,
situational examples.
there, current development that we all know is happening down in town. You know, it was told to me that the reason, this specific city employee wants that to occur is so that the tax revenue from that development can help pay for, that person's, departmental staff. And so let's just say that person was on a committee, right? They may or may not make the correct judgment they may have a preconceived, motivation, you know, to vote in a certain way because it's going to benefit that department's fiscals.
So I would challenge you in that I don't know that the decisions are made based on opinion and desire so much as they're following a specific set of guidelines.
Mhm.
And so if the project meets the guideline, it gets approved, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. There's not a lot of wiggle room there, as you know, in whether things can pass or not. I mean,
Right.
one of those projects didn't pass because it didn't meet the letter of the ordinance, and then one did because it was discussed and decided that it did meet those requirements. That's just my opinion.
Well, the aftermath of that decision, was, we don't go there.
How about other communities? I mean, I do feel like, I think this could happen with even if you own local businesses, or if you happen to be somebody who likes parks and recreation, right? We all bring different things to the table. I think it's like, if you have that conflict of interest, I mean, I would agree that typically, I mean, I see people abstain from, you know, certain conversations and decisions, things when they do have that. So, I'm just, with how volunteering is right now, and the thing that struck me most in the memo was that discouraging anybody to be part of your community right now is something that we don't want to do. So I do think it's something for us to keep an eye on to make sure that we're all being fair and equitable and keeping our personal, you know, agendas aside. And I think this group does a really good job doing that. But I feel like right now the policy is working. I haven't seen anything, but I also don't go to every committee meeting, you know. But I do think it's something for the council members, and maybe it's a review of this policy at some of our committees. Because I don't know when we start, like, when we bring new people on, if, you know, how good of an onboarding do we do, right? We just throw people into the, yep, you're on the Parks Committee, you know, and so maybe we could have a little review of ethics and conduct, you know, at all of our committees. like at the start of the year when people start, or I know you really want to do more training, right, Scott? But I do think like that's something like even the council members or whoever can just, maybe that's something we should take a little pause and do. You know, I mean, make more work for anybody, but I do think good reminders, which is again why I'm working with federal government, you take an ethics and conduct training several times a year to remind you, because sometimes we get, you know, everybody gets off track a little bit. Okay.
Anyone else?
Mary, I'm significantly confused at this point. Forgive me.
That's okay.
So it appears that there is a set criteria of everything that we need to stay within the limits of in discussions in the public. And that criteria has to do with what is best for Washburn. And yet that is a matter of different opinion. And the opinions are in this community roughly fourfold. We have different perspectives on what is best for Washburn.
Mm-hmm.
So who makes that decision of what is best for Washburn? Is this the planning commission? Is this the mayor? Is this Scott?
Certainly not.
Is
the
this
mayor.
the city council? Who is it? And that's the point of confusion, because there's a lot of discussions that really do need to happen. And so if we can't talk to people, if we can't communicate, we're kind of like a dog chasing its tail. That's kind of where my confusion is.
So, all of the above are involved in decisions, of course. There's processes that lay out the process for making the decisions. As far as who serves on the committees, normally we put out a call for volunteers, and those applications are reviewed. I talk to the people who have applied. I decide which one I would like to recommend. I bring that to council. Council either confirms that or denies that. So in this particular situation, that's the process for someone getting onto a committee or commission for the city. So everybody that serves on those has been approved by council. And then that commission or committee talks about the things that need to be discussed, usually determined between the administrator and the leader of that committee, as far as what agenda items. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
Well,
And does it have to do with this item?
it does to a degree specifically, because it's saying that we can't go beyond particular limits on what we discuss. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so the statutory limitations on where we are on a city council. There are things that we can't discuss or shouldn't discuss necessarily.
So you mean with a quorum and that sort of thing?
Right, in the quorum, and if I wanted to be on the planning commission, for instance, and just for instance, let's just say that, should I ask you, or how does one end up making decisions for the city that are discussed? It appears as though there are some ideas. That's what I'm looking at, is that the ideas that are missing from the discussion are not well represented, in my opinion, in my view of some things.
So the discussion is formulated by the people that are on that committee or commission and the leaders of that committee or commission. So if you have interest in serving on a committee, you would let me know that before the next time we do appointments. And then I would look at who we have serving on those things and who I think would be best on which committee or commission. And that's the recommendation that I bring forward to council.
Okay, that makes
You're
sense.
talking about as a council member or as a citizen?
Both. Actually,
So it's a little different depending, because we can only have one council member of a committee or commission generally, I think.
Yeah, generally, certain boards or commissions have different number of aldermen on them. But our standard and typical is that there's no more than one council member on a commission.
so where do we go with ideas then that we have, that are community ideas, that the board should be considering, the planning commission, and that the city council should be considering too? And so this is where the problem is kind of coming in at this particular point, that, we should be discussing several different things that aren't even on the agenda or on the table,
In your opinion.
in my opinion.
So,
And so that's the point, so if I have an opinion on this, I could give you some specific cases if you're interested in it, but I don't know if that's in the level of what we need to be discussing at this point.
yeah, I think we would be straying from the topic, I think, if we went there.
I really feel like we're off the topic. So I would.
Well,
I'm just gonna answer John's question, and then we'll go back to the topic at hand. So if you have specific items that you would like discussed, you can either talk to Scott, is always a good person to start with,
Right.
because he can steer you in the right direction. If there's already information out there about that topic, you can request that something be put on the agenda, like Dave did, and we have these 2 items on the agenda.
And if you're interested in something that's on a committee that you're not on, like for example, I was interested in the planning commission several months ago, a topic I attended, and I raised my hand, I opened the floor, and I gave my opinion.
Okay.
Just
so
like a
that-
member of the public, but I was addressed as a council person, but I'm not on that committee, but I did go, and I did get to say my piece and come up with, during the public comment.
So thank you for all of that. I'm also trying to understand Dave's question, what he is discussing here, because it seems to me like they are similar discussions. And if that is true, then I'm sure Dave would have some more to say. But if it's not, well then maybe I just need to talk to you later.
So Dave, can I try to summarize what I think this topic is about? And that is, there is some concern about the appropriateness of staff serving on councils and commissions.
Conflict of interest.
I think, specifically, well, not specifically, I guess, but here's just a scenario, right? Like, depending on the person's position with the city, they have an audience all day with city management. Something that we could sit here all day and have the same audience, but we all have jobs and things to do.
As do they.
As do they. That's correct. And so, but, sometimes they may be, sitting in the office, maybe after their shift or when they're done, they have some time. And I'm not saying this is occurring. I'm not putting blame or anything, but, plans can be hatched behind closed doors, to bring upon the result of a policy that may be in their favor.
And
so,
my response to that would be, that's why there's a whole commission and committee to make the decision. So
Right.
one person isn't going to make that.
correct. And then the city staff, and this is a little bit off topic, but I still haven't got to the bottom of it, but there is, there was on city time calls being made out of this building to derail policy that we paid our city attorney to draft. and have a discussion at the planning commission, no, not action, discussion. And that the people that are paid by the people in the city shouldn't be paying for someone to derail policy before the end of the year.
So those are the sorts of situations that need to be looked into if there is concern, for sure, and explored. And that's, I think, a very specific scenario that would not fit the general policy.
So let's, I have an example. So for example, well, let's just talk about like Jerry's department in public works. We have people that work in the parks every day. They're very intimate with the parks. They have to like work, it's like part of their job, right? And what if we've never had somebody from Jerry's department asked to be on the parks committee? I could see how that could be like, interesting. Would they be great for the parks committee because they have some intimate knowledge? They could be really helpful? Or could they have some underlying conflict of interest with the parks department? So I can see some examples where city staff on some commissions, part like Parks Committee and different things like that, maybe like, I wonder about that.
And that would be up to the council to decide.
That would be up to the council to decide when we do the
confirm
appointments.
that.
But I think that to me is the only situation I can think of in my head. I'm sure there's other ones. That, I, as a council member, if that was brought up and somebody applied, I would be like, interesting, that might be really helpful, or would they be? So I can see some examples. I mean, I think right now, obviously we're allowing city staff to be on committees. That's, right now, that is the policy, right? And so I don't know if I would recommend at this point changing that policy, but I do think it's it's something for us to certainly think about as we get applications that maybe in the future, if we do start to have issues, we may want to amend it. I haven't seen any issues personally at this point, and I try to attend meetings here and there, but obviously, again, I don't go to all of them. But I can see that there might be some conflicts of interest in the future.
How does the city know when a member of the city staff is performing their job that they're being paid to do and discussing policy issues?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So, for example, if someone from Public Works, let's say, was working, and I'm not going to pick on them, but I'm just giving it as an example. And let's say that person was on the Harbor Commission, right? And they were doing some work down near the harbor, and someone from that has a slip in the harbor goes to them as a concerned slip owner or leasee, and they have a discussion concerning issues with the harbor. So now they're being paid to discuss Harbor Commission issues rather than actually performing their duties. There's no way to know, right? I mean, there's no way to know whether somebody is there, just bumping in and saying hi.
Correct.
Right?
And
that in line is part of it.
I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we would hear about if that became a habit of happening, and then there would be some action potentially taken, or at least a discussion had with a staff person who has, had that observed of them. I'm assuming that people have some judgment. Any one of us, when we're working, get interrupted by things that don't have to do with our jobs, and we have to try to limit those interactions and remind people that, I'm doing this job right now, so, we can talk another time about that, So, there's no hard and fast rule. It's not, I don't think that's something that we could expect someone to not answer a simple question if you're standing right there and you have the information. But if it becomes a lengthy discussion,
it's up to their judgment, to try to limit that. Is that an unreasonable? So, there is nothing, we are not monitoring people, this is not
Right.
1984.
Unexpected. No, with the policy where city staff can't serve on those commissions, and there would be no conflict.
Correct. And at this point, there is no perceived conflict, so I don't see a reason to make any change unless you do, in which case we have personnel review this policy too.
I have a lot of interaction with that department. I have never heard anything of any conflict of interest.
Oh, I think that was a theoretical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would expect that any of us that hears that there is, should bring that forward.
I think that's the important, to me, that seems like that's an important issue here, is that if there is a conflict with a city employee that's serving on a committee, if someone feels there's a conflict, that they go to the administrator or the mayor and discuss their concern, and then take it from there. Because if people don't take those appropriate channels and discuss it with administration, then you don't know if there's a conflict. So I guess that's.
We have contractors on the planning commission. I see no conflict of interest with that. I really don't see this being a conflict of interest.
They're not being paid by the taxpayers.
True.
And just to clarify, staff are not being paid by the taxpayers while they're serving on those commissions.
And it's not just about that either. I mean, it has mostly to do with policy that they may have a hand in either creating or voting on that may directly affect their pay scale with the government.
Or just their department in general, right?
So, I mean, that's really, I think, where I just don't think city staff should be, I guess, having the fox in the hen house kind of thing,
So I don't think we have any action listed on this. It is just listed as a discussion.
Well, I mean, I do think it's an interesting discussion. I mean, I do think that you could have issues, and I think that there's probably some policies. I'm sure some cities don't allow city staff like committee. I'm sure that's out there. Facts.
I think that, and I do think that some larger cities do, but none of the cities or municipalities in northern Wisconsin have that prohibition. Because there is such a limited number of, or none of the municipalities that our firm represents, 11, have that restriction.
Okay, that's a good point, Jeff. Thank you.
And I'm not, I just think we just need to look at this. Find out if it's something that we need to deal with or not. And, so maybe as a litmus test, for future city staff on committees, figure out a way to I don't know, do you interview them?
I generally do, yeah.
I mean, there's just, maybe it's just to be encouraged that they're there as a citizen and not a city staff. And they're not making decisions based on what's best for the city government itself, but the city as a whole. That's all I can.
Okay. Anything else?
Can I make a motion to close the discussion?
No need, we'll move on.
Okay.
I was just asking if there were any last comments in the discussion. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughts and input on that. Then we have already done those, so our next item is actually closed session. And so, everyone in the audience, I would have to ask you, or in attendance, I should ask you to please, leave the building at this time. And if you care to, step outside, we can let you know when we go back into open session. And then after that, we just have a presentation on open records and open meeting requirements.
Just for the record, if we allow Chief Johnson to stay in the closed session, we should note that.
Oh, sure.
And also, my second year law summer intern is here, Cooper Coleman.
Yes.
If we would permit him to stay also during closed session, that is up to the board or council, obviously.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to go into closed session with those exceptions?
So,
All right. Motion by Dave, second by Tom, to go into closed session with the inclusion of Chief Johnson and Assistant, I'm sorry, I forgot your name,
Cooper Coleman.
Cooper Coleman.
Hi, Cooper.
Uh, And we have another gentleman.
I'm Frank.
Oh, okay. Wonderful, thank you. All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call.
Mayor McGrath,
Here, yes.
Tracy Snyder,
Yes.
Jim Mazias,
Yes.
Tom Minus,
Yes.
Dave Anderson,
Yes.
John Hopkins.
Yes.
Jared Trumbo,
Yes.
all approved closed session at 6:32.
Tony, do you have another closed session back? I just had to call them and